It's 2025, so we decided to do New Year Reset. The idea of this episode is to find out where you want your art to move forward in this year. So let's go for it.
We've been talking quite a lot recently, Debs, about our life changes, and I think it would be nice to start off with thinking about your lifestyle and what you want 2025 to look like and how you kind of fit your art around that.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're saying is it's important to progress your art, but it has to fit in. If it's part of you, then it has to fit in with who you are and where you are in your life. Yeah? So both Ruth and I are making some changes. Ruth's changes are slightly bigger than my changes. But so Ruth is making a move from one end of the country to the other. I'll let you talk about it because it's going to make quite a big difference to your artwork. Yeah.
It is my practice as a whole, I think. So I'm going to be moving from Scotland, where I am at the moment, all the way down to Brighton. And my reasoning for choosing Brighton is that it's got a really lively art community down there. It's got lots of galleries and it's not too far away from London either, which is obviously like the centre of the art scene in the UK. And I've also got friends down there, so I've spent some time down there before, so I've got an idea of what it's like to kind of live there. So it ticks a lot of boxes for me. So recently I've been thinking about, well, how am I going to make this work in terms of fitting into the community there and what are the sorts of things that I need to do? Because I'm obviously going to be kind of a new artist on the scene. So what's going to be important for me in 2025 is integrating myself into that artist community. So I was thinking in terms of my painting and where I do my painting, and I'm going to be looking for a shared studio down there so I can get to meet other artists and integrate in the community, and I suppose also hear about other opportunities as well that might be going on in the area and just get to know other artists down there. So in terms of how I work at the moment, I just work at home in my spare bedroom. And that worked quite.
Sorry.
Debbie's just adjusted a chair and she looked like it was a bit of a thud.
Okay, I am listening to, you integrating into the community.
Yeah, so previously I used to work in my spare bedroom at home because that suited me. And particularly whilst I was working a day job as well, it meant that I could just kind of, literally shut down my laptop and then continue painting in the evening or in the morning. But now as I look at that and I assess things, I think that's definitely something that's going to change in 2025. So that's just kind of one little example of fitting my lifestyle and my overarching kind of needs and path to success up with how I create my art.
And actually that affects some of the decisions you make on what's within your art and where your art's going to move forward. So we've already done an episode on reflecting on 2024 and how your art is not only what's worked, what hasn't, but also about moving forward with next steps. So we started to reflect, but we thought on this episode, because we're looking at it from a lifestyle choice point of view as well, which I think is great, which also sort of fits in with what we're doing with business side as well, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
From my perspective, I would like to spend more time. George is actually retired now, and I want to. We've got a camper van which we want to upgrade to a motorhome, and the reason we want to do that is because we want to be able to go off grid, and we want to be able to do it comfortably with a toilet. To be honest, that is, comfortably, and have heating all year round, not just like in the summer where it's just warm enough. And what we were planning to do, or what I'm thinking, is that having that facility means that I'll be able to go and do some of the idea collecting, the ideas generation, whilst George is having a retirement and not it all being art sort of thing. Yeah. So we do have ideas of, travelling through Germany and going down some of the coasts and go to Ireland. There's lots of ideas, and I thought these obviously are going to be fabulous places for me to collect sort of landscape information, really.
Yeah, inspiration.
Yeah, but that will affect how I work, although not as much as you would think, because I do already go out, collect, come back, paint. It's still going to be similar, but it'll be blocks of time. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if we come back to what we were talking about at the beginning, it's about tying it into what you want in your personal life as well as in your art life. So that matches up perfectly, doesn't it? You're making it easier on yourself.
It does, and also it allows for us to see grandchildren in. There's other reasons that we've got the motorhome as well. So it should all tie together.
Yeah. And I think it's important to think about your personal priorities as well as your priorities as well. So, it might be family, grandchildren, children, whatever it might be. There's something interesting that Nicholas Wilton does every year. I don't know whether you've heard about it, Debs, but what he does is he picks a word for the year to kind of tie everything around. And it's to kind of set your intention for that year, and it should flow into your artwork, your life, business, all that kind of thing.
Okay. So, have you thought about your word?
I've thought about it. I'm not quite there yet, but I know it's around the intention of kind of building a foundation for myself and building a new life and having a kind of new, fresh start and a foundation to build from. So I feel like that's going to be my theme for 2025. But last year I chose the word spark because I was leaving my day job, obviously, and it was all about kicking new things off and getting excited about things and kind of seeing where things went. So, and I think that changes from year to year. So it's helped me over the years to kind of focus in on what's my priority here, because when you're making choices, it can be quite difficult sometimes to make choices,
Yeah, so that's quite a new concept for me, but I would have said that the last couple of years have been about exploring, but this year is more about consolidating, about putting into practice. Yeah, I haven't thought of the word, but that's what it is about. And yeah, make it all fit together. I'll have a think.
Yeah.
I'll come up with words. Yeah. So when you're moving forward, deciding on your lifestyle that you want, deciding on how you want to actually incorporate your art. So I'm still loving my studio space that's within the house. That's great. So I can go out, and I was having students here, but I've stopped classes, and I'm only going to have like my little Let's Create half days now. So I'm freeing up time, and then we're going to do a lot of art hub stuff as well, aren't we? So that's the sort of general plan for this year, but being more specific about our art. So I think moving on to art, I was thinking, so we've talked a little bit about lifestyle choices. This affects our art, but how does that affect the materials or the processes? How does it affect what you want to do? And some of that's going to be related to how we've reflected as well on the last episode. So have you got any thoughts on that? for how you want to move forward this year?
Yeah, so in the last episode, I definitely talked about this theme of kind of just allowing myself to explore with different materials and allowing myself to play with different things because I'm going through a lot of changes at the moment. So I feel like I need to use my art as a tool for myself for a while and almost put the commercial side on the back burner for myself a little bit because, as I mentioned, I've already got quite a few paintings and things in stock that I can use to sell, etc., and just give myself a bit of a space to explore and as my own therapy in a way as well. So yeah, so that's my intention, to kind of go back and just, I suppose,
lots of materials, so you
Yeah.
don't know everything. But you talked about printmaking, didn't you?
Yeah, and maybe using textiles and things like that because I used to do textile design at university. So I'm interested in going back to that and see where that goes and kind of expanding from just doing painting to opening up to different materials and processes and just seeing where that goes.
Yeah, and I've got in March a gallery. We've got 2 weeks in a gallery with another two artists, Sue Chatterton and Claire Valentine. So that's going to be really interesting. So I've got the space suddenly to be able to get the art out there.
Yeah.
And yes, I can use some of the older stuff that's finished, but I do want to be creating new things to get out there.
Yeah.
And I think that I should I have been doing it, just doing it. So yeah, it's almost like this is the year to do and get out.
Yeah.
So for me, it's quite important that as well as giving myself more time for art, but sort of splitting it up. So when we go out in the motorhome or whatever, it's about collecting, almost compartmentalising. And I've started to do bits of that in sketchbooks and that, where they're different sketchbooks for different things, so that I'm able to play in different ways, which suits me because I have sometimes a little bit the butterfly, I suppose, a little bit with my ideas. However, that doesn't mean that I don't want to consolidate it, which is definitely the thing that I want it all to pull together this year. So yeah, but materials and processes, the things I want to experiment with are continuing with my process, which is and exploring more this idea of not having the end result in mind, but having a very firm idea of what I want to represent before I go into the painting, and also the idea of bringing the words in. I think that those are my two big things. I've played a lot with materials and I think that I almost need to par back and just decide what I really want. And I like the idea of, for each collection, just limiting what I'm doing.
And it sounds like to me you're really narrowing your focus this year and really honing in on the specifics of what you want to do and getting really clear on that. So it's like you're getting a clarity.
Yeah, in fact, clarity could be the word. That's what, yes. Clarity, and it's that clarity that's going to help with the communication to get everything out there as well.
Yeah. And get organised for your exhibition and
I'm
things
writing
like
that down. Yeah, I think clarity's a really good word for this year. Yeah, but that's clarity on my art.
Yeah.
So I've I've got the 2 August. I've got an exhibition as well, so I've got plenty of scope to like really play.
Yeah.
You know, and there'll be little things in between. I like the idea of opening the studio, but on the other hand, it is like a lot of tidying up and rethinking, and I know this. When I've stopped classes, that's helped with me being able to just leave materials about,
Yeah.
say, like just leave things about to play with. Whereas if you're having to tidy up every week, it's actually quite disruptive to the creativity.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I suppose that's you thinking about your creative environment, isn't it, and your space and how that's going to work best for you. Because previously we've spoken about it's your physical space, it's the space that is commanded by your workshops. Sometimes it's almost like it's a visual distraction from doing the art, isn't it, as well?
yeah, and literal, because you have to tidy up.
yeah.
And quite often, and there's things I want to do, like I do want to be using that not just as a put stuff up and look at it, as a painting wall and things like that, which means I'm going to have to sheet it up because I've got a nice floor. And you do all that, and then people are coming in to see you.
Yeah.
You just need to use it, be able to use it as a studio. And I haven't had that because there's always been people coming in here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's changing. So but there will be once a month, but they'll cope once a month with a little bit of mess. It'll be all right. Yeah, and I'll cope with once a month. It'll be fine. But in between,
I think the important thing that you talked about there as well, Debs, is sort of different milestones that you know are coming up and different seasons and looking at the bigger picture of your time, which I think is also an important thing to think about. Like some artists I know, they'll create like mad in, say, like spring, and then when it comes around to the end of the year, they've not got much planned purposefully because they know that's going to be a busy social time or whatever else they've got going on in their life. So it's also important, I think, to think realistically about how much time you've got and when works best for you as well, because there's no point trying to force painting at a time of year where you're like, well, that's not going to work because it's just not natural. And we are part of nature. We do work in seasons as well, and sometimes we forget that. I think with the whole 9 to 5 hustle culture, that people think you're going to be 100% all of the time, but you don't actually work like that, do you?
And I think for me, spring is a big boost of creativity.
Yeah.
Or and particularly, I would say, absorbing new ideas. So we're going into this 2025, and it's a little bit of it's what you do, isn't it? You do the spring cleaning, don't you? Ready for the new year, and then and you literally do that. Tidy up your art room, tidy through things. I feel a bit different this year about doing paintings sort of February time. I do feel a little bit different because in the past I have done a lot of just clearing and stuff, but I'm a bit more inspired winter-wise this time. I don't even know why that is. But normally it's spring and autumn. Autumn I just get inspired by the colours.
Yeah.
And in the past, I've had classes and it sort of works seasonally in a different way. So I've often had most of December off. I don't work through December. Some people are very busy through December, aren't they? But that's not how I worked because I've got grandchildren and I just like to focus on family then. And then in the summer, a lot of people who come and paint do slow up over the summer, but we often done things like painting holidays and stuff like that. But this year I haven't got any plans for that. I quite like the idea of some small ones, but I think that we've just got to I really want to focus on art and Art Hub. It makes a difference, doesn't it, too, because you know what your focus is going to be.
Yeah. And then you don't feel as conflicted when you're not doing the painting or whatever it might be, because you know, actually I've made a conscious choice to have, let's say, July and August off painting, and I'm going to do sketchbook work instead. Yeah. And that's fine because you've made that decision and you know that come autumn time you're going to be painting again. So it's You feel less of like a guilty conscience because you've thought about all these things ahead of time. I think it helps take the pressure off.
Yeah, and we always did more sketching and going outside and all of that in the
Yeah,
summer
yeah,
and spring, summer. Spring when you
yeah.
can, and yeah, as you. To me, that just makes perfect sense. I always say, spring's coming, sketch season. So wait for
Yeah,
the snowdrops.
yeah,
That's it. Yeah. But I think I'm doing more experimental sketchbooks, which is slightly different from the outside sketchbooks. So I started to actually separate sketchbooks out into different things now. Yeah.
yeah. So I suppose in terms of how you work throughout the year, I think another thing to talk about is working in series or collections as well at a time, because I think that's something that's really helped kind of organise my creativity. If I've got like 10 canvases on the go and they're all around a particular theme, I can really then like deep dive into that. But also, when you're creating more than one painting at a time, again, it just takes that pressure off for that painting to be amazing because you can switch between different canvases and
Yeah.
be.
And when you do that, do you have different I'm just asking about your
Yeah,
process now. Have lots of different sizes, or how
yeah,
do you
I have
tend to?
different sizes. I mean, my biggest ones at the moment are about 75 by 100, but then I've got some canvases that are like 50 by 40, and I'm also planning on bringing in the printmaking side of things as well into this collection. So it won't just be paintings, it'll be some paper based work as well. Whether or not they'll actually go in the collection will be something different because I'll just have to see how they turn out.
Yeah, because you're giving yourself permission,
Yeah,
not
yeah, but
yeah,
it's kind of working along the same sort of themes but in a different medium as well. So there's no reason why you can't create a collection of 5 paintings, 5 prints, 5 drawings, and they're tied together with the same sort of theme.
yeah. Because I've got two things on the go in my head, and yeah, the one is the near and far, which I'm feeling like is for and for March, and but the other one is the poetry, and that's the winter themed. So yeah, that's the two things that are going on, and that winter themed one is smaller. It's like, yeah, because of the collage and because I'm just finding it easier. And I'm not saying that I won't collage large at some point, but I just haven't worked it out in my head yet. I like collages to be going off the side of the painting. And I think so they need, for me, that's what I'm struggling with. They're going from one side to another with a great sheet of paper. So the physicalness of it, that side of it. So, but I can do some small ones, and I love doing the sketches outside and then coming back and collaging from them. That's great. I love it. So, but I never think of those as ones to sell either, or to. They're just things I like doing, really, for ideas. So there's an in-between process. That's something that I didn't mention when we talked last time. I never used to have this in-between process. So I go out, collect, do all of that, sketch, photograph, that sort of thing. Then when you come back, there can be an in-between experimental thing within the studio before it goes onto a canvas. And that could be in the sketchbooks, and that's the extra sketchbooks. So, and I'm really liking that. I'm enjoying that. Yeah. No pressure and just enjoy getting those ideas together. It's great. So, how do seasons affect you?
I'm quite similar to you in some ways. So, like spring, I definitely feel a real pull of that like creative energy, and I want to be painting and I want to be creating things. Summer tends to be a little bit slower, but I think the main difference between me and you is I do like to paint in the winter because I struggle a bit with the dark season, just the lack of light, and I feel like I need something just to kind of get me through. So quite often I'll paint quite bright paintings in the winter that are reminiscent of like summer. So I definitely use the winter season to, paint for myself as well.
But I think that's what I'm saying. This year I feel differently.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why. So I feel more like painting this year.
And
I can't say why.
Well, it might be that you've got this whole new momentum around this new way of working as well.
I think it's because I've got like a wintry collection-y thing going on. Yeah. And I have this thing that it's like, I think I might have mentioned this before. If I'm painting an autumn painting and then I don't finish it, I tend not to want to do it until the following year. I did that once with this deer, and it took me 2 years not because it took a long time, just because I'd stop and then I'd restart it again. But it's almost like I can't paint things that are to do with other seasons.
Yeah, you can't paint out of season.
It's really weird. It's very, very strange. It's like I'm very influenced, and even if I'm painting a different season, the things that are happening around do influence. Yeah. So if the weather's not good, it's really interesting. If I'm trying to do it, I can possibly get an idea going over now. So that has changed, but it's still influenced by what's around. And I think that that's what it is with the winter, that I wasn't as inspired. So I've painted sort of snow scenes and stuff like that, but they don't inspire me that much. I just done it to try it, really. But the sort of scenes that I love are the winter scenes where things are emerging, like the snowdrops. I mean, I always go a bit mad on snowdrops and painting them in February. So it's that emerging of the growth and that side of it. So I do always paint snowdrops. I can't, because they're just one of the first things.
There are certain things that you gravitate towards, aren't naturally. So like for me, I love, when you get that kind of low light in summer, when it casts shadows over things and it just makes everything look like really dramatic. I love that.
Yeah.
So like sort of August time, I'll go out and I'll take lots and lots of photos because I really want to capture that and use those kinds of things, probably over like my winter paintings. And there's just certain things that you gravitate towards, and I think it's important to like honour that, no matter like what it is. It's like, that's the thing that interests me, isn't it?
So now we're talking about some of the things that can get in the way of the creativity. And we did have a little chat before, and we wanted to talk about productivity, because it's not always how it seems.
Yeah. And I think being productive creatively is something a bit different, isn't it, from like if you think about your output at work and things like that. So where I fall down in my productivity is previously I've just tried to do too much and squeeze too much into the year, and then I end up doing a lot of things not very well and feeling a bit like my attention is just too scattered. So that's why I really like the whole idea of setting an intention around a word for the year, because it really just focuses your mind onto the kind of things that are important to yourself. And I think quite often we overestimate what we can do in a year, but then underestimate the cumulative effect of it over like say 5-10 years. So I think it's important to build a kind of a sustainable art practice that you can keep up with and that you'll be able to achieve, because that's going to make you feel much better, isn't it, about what you're doing?
Joy.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Yeah, because sometimes you can put pressure on yourself where you think, gosh, a month's gone by and I haven't touched that painting. You can do that. But then what will happen is you'll have a whole day and suddenly you've started 5. It's really weird. It's like, because it's not always about your intention, sometimes it's about the space you've got around you, isn't it? Does that make sense? So sometimes it's you start something because you have to and then it inspires you, but it often is that you just need a little bit of space where other things aren't getting in the way. And I think that when you talk about productivity, you were saying before that you think that sometimes you're more productive if you have less to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So just talk about that for a moment, because that's quite counterintuitive for a lot of people.
Yeah. I suppose it's also about like how you produce your artwork as well. So for me, if I was to set a goal of say like 3 paintings a month, that wouldn't really work for me, because it depends what month you're in as to when the paintings will get produced. So it's more likely that I'll do 10 paintings over 6 months, say. So it's also thinking about like your timelines as well. But yeah, I think I've definitely overloaded myself in the past and set like all these ambitious goals and then ended up, maybe doing 1 out of 10. But I think if you can focus on one thing at a time, there's definitely the whole psychological thing of switching between tasks is not very good for the human brain, and you become really unproductive if you're trying to do too much in one go. I think where sometimes we get caught up and a bit confused is that like contemporary life and the way, particularly if you work in a desk job, you're expected to do like 20 things in one day, and the human brain just doesn't work like that. There's a difference between doing sort of a lot of short tasks as well versus like deep focus work, and I think painting is an art is deep focus work that you need to spend chunks of time on.
I find, I don't know what other people do, because you never used to when you were working. You used to do it in short periods of time. So we talked about this before. But I find that if I've got a chunk of time, then I am more productive. Definitely. When I was ill, I went to see an occupational therapist, and you used to have to manage your time for energy. And we used to have like charts and things that I filled out to say, how you felt. And it was about evening everything out. So what we're talking about here feels slightly different to that. However, the one thing that she said, which I've sort of stuck with, is how I only have 3 big things. Yeah. And I sort of try to do that in the business. And sometimes you realise you're stretching yourself too far. So it's okay to have Art Hub and the art and perhaps something else, which for me feels like YouTube and the podcasts and that sort of thing. If you start to try and do workshops and painting holidays and everything, which is what I was trying to do last it's very hard. And the reason I was doing that last year was because that was old style business, and I was having to move, and you had that crossover, and that is quite difficult if you're trying to do that many things. But also, obviously, within your life, you've got things as well, which is why we started off this podcast, and I think we're ending on it now, with the fact that if you can find art practices that fit in with your lifestyle choices, and yes, don't think that in December you're going to do as much as you do in, say, I don't know, May. And that'll be different for everybody. So some people will work really well in 1 month, and that doesn't work for somebody else. It's as unique as your art is, and which is as unique as you are. So that's all making sense, isn't it? Yeah. Because I think, and I suppose when you take it down to if you can work in series, then even if it's like I've got these 2 series on in my mind, then that's okay, because you can work on one, then you can work on another. It's just like one's brewing.
Yeah.
But it does help if you, because I've got a lot of art materials here, and it's made worse by the fact that I did a lot of workshops and provided materials.
Yeah.
So things that I'm not as interested in, I've got. And it's so easy to just go, well, we'll try this and we'll do a bit of that. And yeah, that was more about showing other people than about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't need that many art materials to get going, do you? Anything else on productivity? I mean, you were the project manager, so you were like a productivity queen.
Yeah, I mean, projects were always based around 3 fundamental things. So it was the scope of the project, so it was a description of what you're trying to achieve. It was the time of what you've got to deliver the project by, and then it was your cash flow. So there were always these 3 things that you were balancing. So if, for example, the scope of the project was expanded and they decided that we're going to roll out broadband from 10 sites, but that's increased to 20, that's then going to have an impact on your time and your budget as well. And the same things apply for the other things. So say you've got more time to deliver the scope, that's going to stretch out your scope, and that's going to change when the money runs out as well. So you might have to do things like stretch resources over that period of time. And I think the same thing works for art, maybe not so much in the commercial sense in a way, because although that's still going to be a thing that you need to think about, how much do you want to spend on art materials this year, it's not the same as a kind of corporate industry in IT where it's all very expensive. But there's definitely the time element that you've got to think about, and then there's the scope, which you can think about as your collection. What do you want to do with your collection? What are you trying to achieve, and how much time have I got to achieve that in?
It's interesting. And I still think that goes back to 3 things to think about as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's not, that makes it, but what I liked about what you just said was the fact that sometimes one expands and sometimes another does.
Yeah, yeah. So they all interlink between each other. So if you change anything, that
so
changes.
What we're saying, I think, is that your focus could do with not being split too many ways. That if you've got to focus on one thing, you'll get more done.
Yeah. Because if you start adding more to the project outcomes or your collection outcomes, that's going to also do things like increase the risk around things not happening and increase potential issues and all those sorts of things. So with my project manager hat on, stress, you pull on time, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's meant to be fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it may be a business, but there's a reason we're painting, and it's not to kick out paintings, is it? That's not what we're about. We're about finding how to express ourselves and sharing that with other people. Yeah. And we hope that people buy it because they connect to it. But you don't, I mean, I don't want some fancy collector who's only buying my art for monetary purposes. That's not where I'm at all in my head. You know, you want people to buy because they connect to your art and they love it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things that we decided to do this year, Debs, in terms of planning and productivity, we've got a theme around each month, haven't we, which ties into our art as well as kind of what we're doing behind the scenes in Art Hub as well. Yes. So we've purposefully tried to line the 2 things up because I think we're both very conscious that if we do our art and Art Hub in completely different ways, there's just going to be too much of a mental split between both the 2 things, and it's just going to be difficult to manage. And that happened with me slightly with some of the workshops that I was doing when I was changing over, when I was changing my style, because a lot of customers that wanted other things. So that happens sometimes when you're changing, but transitioning. But with Art Hub, it's definitely in alignment with who we are, for certain.
Yeah.
We did all that, didn't we? And actually, there's something else that's really exciting. So I'm hoping that it's not going to be too long until we have our artist roadmap out.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a way of you looking at your own art and finding out your movement forward. We'll be doing that as a lead magnet, won't we? And so that you can actually find your own roadmap.
Yes, what we want to do is create a personalised roadmap for people to really progress with their art in the best way forward that's going to be authentic to them, because I think we both know what a challenge it's been to get to where we are now. And we'd like to take all of that and turn it into something that's like practical and easy to use and takes away a bit of that overwhelm as well, because I think sometimes there's so many things that you could potentially be doing. It's like, and I've been previously distracted by all that noise around me that's in like social media, so you might see what another artist is doing and be like, I should really be doing that. And
yes,
it's
and
so
YouTube.
easy, isn't it, to get pulled in different directions. And
absolutely.
So I think if you've got like a focus of what you want to do that year, it just makes things a lot easier. Then you've always got something to come back to and be like, that's not important right now. What I really need to do is, for example, go on a course to learn how to do something, rather than set myself up for an exhibition, because this year I'm just being a bit more explorative in my work and I just want to play a bit more instead of putting that pressure on myself. So it does really help you like think about what you want to do and how you want to do it, because I think we've all been there where it's been like, oh, I should be doing that, I should be doing that. Should is a key word, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If you're saying should, then you're probably not on the right path.
Yeah.
If you're saying this excites me, I'm feeling a bit like a child, you're probably on the right path.
Yeah. If you can't wait to get back to it again, then absolutely.
So I think we might be on to takeaways, you know.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, 2025. What's your takeaway for 2025?
Where do I start? It's quite a lot to think about for 2025 for me. I probably need to spend some time myself sort of sitting down, thinking about my word for the year a bit more, what I really want to achieve. Because I think part of my challenge is going to be going down to Brighton. I think I'm probably going to have a lot of opportunities open up down there, and for me it's going to be about being selective about what I want to do. So I foresee that as being a challenge, so I need to get really super clear on like what 2025 is going to be. Prioritising with my artwork, with connecting with other artists, all those sorts of things that I want to do.
I think yours is going to be a lot about connecting as well, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. It is.
Particularly with other artists.
Yeah.
And I think mine is probably going to be, that word clarity for me was really good actually, because it's more about decluttering.
You're refining things now, aren't you? You've been through that stage where you've done a lot of exploring, but you're really kind of focusing in and refining now what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's also going to be like, what artwork do you select for the collection? What specifically do you want to explore in your next collections and all those sorts of things?
And I know 2026 is quite a way away yet, but I can see that this year's are going to be about clarity, getting the artwork together, having a couple of exhibitions to get it out there, and also putting it out on the website and just letting people know, and getting me out there on YouTube and doing a little bit on there as well. And then the following year feels like it'll be more about getting it out there. But this year is still about clarity and finding a firm footing, really, as to where I'm at. So I think this has been a good episode, actually. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's helped me a lot as well. Yeah.
So found the reflecting episode harder, because I think maybe we should have reflected a little before we came into the episode. This one's really good.
The thing about reflection, I think there's so many different ways of doing it and so many different creative processes that it's hard to summarise, isn't it? It's quite an abstract concept, isn't it, I think, when it comes to your art.
Yeah. And I think on that note, shall we say goodbye?
Yeah, say goodbye.
Anything else to say? Okay, so bye for now.
See you soon.